Welcome to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. I'm a retired 20-year veteran sergeant of the Los Angeles Police Department, having spent all 20 years in patrol, and I am not afraid to pull the covers back and expose that thin blue line. Today I want to share with you a story because, listen, it seems like we got to protect our children. Listen, and I mean all of our children. I mean our millennials. I don't know the generation above millennial. We got to look out for those guys too. But particularly, we got to look out for the little people, because these school resource officers, I'm starting to see just far too many incidents where officers who are assigned to patrol elementary schools, middle schools, are just a little too aggressive with our young people. And so the talk is something that we all must have with all of our loved ones, no matter the age. I'm not even sure how young is too young to have the talk. This story is making news again. It happened back in September of last year, 2019, but it's back in the news. Why? Well, because the video involved in this arrest of a 6-year-old child has now been released. Thankfully, the officer involved, former officer on the Orlando Police Department, whose name is Dennis Turner, is no longer on the department. But family, I'm troubled about how he was allowed to retire in 2018 and then come back as a reserve officer. Listen, anybody who spent, I think he spent about 23 years on the job. Anybody who spends 23 years as a police officer and wants to come back and work for free as a reserve makes me think they're about 9 cents short a dime and bear watching. Why do you still want to be the police after 2 decades having retired? Sir, have you nothing better to do with your time? Anyway, this officer, Dennis Turner, was working in an elementary school, and I don't know why the administrators call the police. And so listen, maybe there needs to be some more training for these administrators about when to call school resource officers into your office to have a discussion about something that a child has done. I mean, listen, what did administrators, principals, vice principals, office clerks, what did they do before school resource officers? They resolved conflict. They picked up the phone, they called mom or dad, and had a conversation and worked it out. Now they push a button, they get on a radio, they call a nut job, kind of like Dennis Turner, and then this happens.
It's not gonna hurt. No!
Okay, no, I want handcuffs on! No! Don't put handcuffs on! I don't want to go to the police car.
You don't want to?
No.
Really?
Please. Please. Please.
The restraints, are they necessary?
Yes. And if she was bigger, she would have been wearing regular handcuffs. But the youngest I've ever arrested was 7. 6,000 people I've arrested over the 28 years. A lot of people.
7 is your youngest?
7 is the youngest. She's 8, isn't she? She's 6. Now she has broken the record.
Now, as I talk to you about Officer Dennis Turner, I want you to just take a look. That's him. I want you to remember that face, because, you know, even though he's no longer on the department, he's retired. He may, get engaged in some off-duty police work if he sees something occurring that just sticks in his craw, right? He's a scary kind of guy. And I don't know that having been fired is going to actually stop him from wanting to be the police. But nonetheless, let me just tell you a little bit about Dennis Turner. But before I do that, you heard in the video, little Kaia Rolle is her name. She's 6 years old. And on that particular day, this donkey had arrested 2 6-year-olds, because nothing shows you're more of a man than being able to go home and tell the missus that you took 2 bad little hombres, 6-year-old girls, into custody, right? So this donkey, like I said, he retired, and he came back as a reserve officer. Now, it took about a week for them to fire him after this incident. So this lets you know that when police departments want to move swiftly, they can. Orlando Police Chief Roland said that he was even shocked by Turner's actions, and he apologized directly to the children involved and their families. Well, of course he apologized, because he understands that there's a very real possibility that civil litigation is next. And so, family, please don't let these police departments, these municipalities, these sheriff's departments off the hook with an apology, because of course they're going to be sorry, but what they won't do is change substantively the policies that allow this kind of foolishness to happen in the first case. They made an example of him and they got rid of him, but did they change their policy? Did they change the way they're going to deal with children? Why in the world would you need to put zip tie handcuffs, because that's what it was, a zip tie? Her little wrists were too small for a traditional handcuff, and he was proud to let you know that, if she had been a little bit bigger, he'd have put the real cuffs on her. And who knows how many arrests they make? I mean, come on, are you kidding me? This is why they need to have psychological reevaluations regularly, because listen, this guy didn't just get stupid once he became a reserve officer. He had to have been, yeah, he was crazy, allegedly, all along, because what we now know after the fact is that during his 23-year tenure on the Orlando Police Department, he had been the subject of 16 citizen complaints. 16 in 23 years. I spent 20 years on the Los Angeles Police Department, and guess what? I had no citizen complaints. So it's possible to do the job, to work in a fast-paced environment during, high crime, drive-by shootings, gangbangers, and yeah, I did all that. No citizen complaints, no shootings. This guy had 16. Now, they say that the 16 complaints didn't rise to the level of an internal affairs investigation, a formal one, whatever that means. That sounds like code talk to me, family. 16 complaints, and not a one of them rose to the level that was sufficient to generate a formal internal affairs investigation. So that means either they just talked to him or they looked the other way. He lived to offend again. He learned nothing, and that's why he had 16 complaints. Now, we also know, because I read it, so it must be true, that he had actually been disciplined 7 times during his 23-year career. So, 16 complaints, didn't rise to the level of a formal internal affairs investigation, disciplined 7 times. Don't know what that discipline was. Was it a paper penalty? Did he do a couple of suspension days? I don't know. But they knew all of that, and they allowed him to come back out of retirement as a reserve officer. That would have been the perfect time to say, ooh-wee, I am so glad to be done with this donkey. And he wants to be a reserve. No, sir. You've done your time, and we've had all we can have of you. But they let him come back, and they put him in an elementary school to boot. So, I don't know if this family is seeking some other kind of redress. It doesn't say. I pray to my Jesus that they are. Because listen, you heard that little baby crying. You heard her pleading and begging with him to not handcuff her, pleading and begging to not be put in a police car. She didn't want to get in a police car. And listen, I don't know what she could have done that could have been so outrageous and egregious that he would have to escort her away and probably had her little friends see him put her in the back of a police car. I mean, listen, bullying is a thing. It goes on, and even little people know to make fun of other little people. Did her family have to take her out of that school now because of embarrassment? And the administrators are asking, did you really need to put the zip ties on her? Well, administrators, you guys call this donkey to the office for whatever it was. You couldn't have handled that little 6-year-old girl and whatever her disciplinary situation was without involving the police. Why are these administrators, no matter the ethnicity, because it looked to me like those folks in the office looked a lot like me, and you see, oh boy, that lets you know that, probably what you already understand, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right? And so, listen, police officers who are drunk with power, who are overzealous, come in all colors, all ethnicities. And so unless and until police departments decide to be proactive, decide to hold them accountable when they do something that just makes no doggone sense, we're going to continue to see this kind of stuff. And so that's why, family, is so important that you have a conversation with your little people, and you need to talk to them about how to comport themselves, even if they're only 6. What do you do? And listen, make a little game of it. Have a little drill. Reinforce it, because, these kinds of skills, if you will, who would think a 6-year-old would need to know this to deal with the police, but it's perishable and little people might forget. And so these are conversations that you need to have regularly with your little people. Teach them a phrase or two to say to an adult in the moment, to allow them to make a phone call, or to ask for someone to make a phone call on their behalf, to not answer questions because they may not be as savvy as the questioner, right? All things that we need to teach our young people so that we can keep them safe, because now we know, even in elementary school, with a school resource officer, the goal is surviving the police encounter. That's it, family. Thank you for watching. Support our mission, Surviving Police Encounters, at my Venmo or CashApp, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. You can also purchase my autobiography, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Until next time, be good, be safe.